Alright guys, so hell coming to you with another video. This may be a series of videos now that I did my research and now that it just dawned upon me really to research this factor. It just kind of dawned on me. It just came into my head. And while I'm not doing it to be part of the oppression Olympics, I realized that dang, this is really a thing, and I really didn't know it was a thing. Well, I guess I didn't know it was a thing, but something initially inside me told me it was a thing before. So I think maybe another reason why I am here, inshallah, starting over again in Russia, is because we kind of went through the same thing. Not on the same level, so to say, but just in a general sense. I was not aware that there was such thing as what they call Russophobia and Slavophobia. I never knew those things, okay? Until like digging a little bit and doing the history. And well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us as like different tribes and different peoples so that we may know one another. I guess this is a way that I get to know another people. May Allah forgive me. I know everything I need to know about Anglo people from America, UK, Canada, France, Italy, Germany, Belgium, Netherlands, Australia, and the like thereof. I know everything I need to know about them, and respectfully speaking, I'd rather not be around them. Respectfully speaking, I'd rather not be around them. But anyhow, it's very interesting. It's very interesting, the Slavophobia and the Russophobia. This video is going to be about the Slavophobia and Russophobia, but then the next video, this will be part one, and this may be a series. And then, part two will basically figure in how the African, fits into this equation. But I didn't really know that, in the United States, there was a time where, for example, you had Arab immigrants being largely Lebanese, Syrians, I guess Egyptians, they, fought tooth and nail to be identified as white on the census. And the reason being is because, of course, phenotypically speaking, they're not white, white skin, yes. White skin, yes. Roman admixture, yes. Of course, that is true. We know that for a fact. Now, an interesting thing about this is that they weren't the only ones who fought for this, okay? Also, Slavic people did too, as well. So you had, of course, I hate to say it, but, America will make it seem like that they were on the side of good when they fought against the Nazis. But truthfully speaking, in Maurice Bishop's book, Maurice Bishop, the former Prime Minister of Grenada, he even said that had it not been for Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor, America would have been fighting on the side of the Nazis. You know, that number one factor basically determined that, okay, they're going to fight on the side of the what do they call that? I forgot the name for the side that fought against the Nazis, basically. But had that not been had that not happened on Pearl Harbor, they would have been with Germany, Nazi Germany. Dead serious. I'm not making this up. I'm not speaking just from my mouth. So I'm dead serious when I say this. So, as a result of this, we'll start with the Slavophobia in Europe. Now, Germany, of course, Germany with their Nazi ideology, which has spread, it has spread, and, I hate to say it, but Western Anglo people took more than a couple of pages out the book of it, and and it's a known factor in Ukraine as well. I guess it's one of those things, you can't beat them, join them. And that's exactly what happened in Ukraine. And there's a history of that as well. So, with that being said, in the European sense, when it came to Slavic people who were fleeing war and things like that, believe it or not, despite like the Soviet Union, despite the AK-47 being invented in the Soviet Union, despite the fact that they were amongst the first to go to space, despite the fact that, in the Soviet Union, the game of Tetris was invented, despite these factors, they were still looked at as backwards, like primitive people who were not like them, not like the Anglo Saxon. This also proceeded into different parts of Western Europe, be it France, Italy, and also, another certain people who decided to do it, and said if you can't beat them, join them, were the Polish people as well. Hence why I will never be caught black in Poland. You know what I mean? I've talked to these people, I see how they act, and it's just very, very unfortunate that many are going there, because people are seeing videos and whatnot have you of this. But yeah, keep me out of Poland. Will not be going there. Okay. So, with this being said, when we move to America and the immigration of Polish people, or the immigration of Slavic people to America, they kind of group the Slavic and Balkan people into one category. So if you were like a Serbian, if you were a Bosnian, if you were a Croatian, if you were from that, like Yugoslavia, when they had Yugoslavia, yeah, Yugoslavia, when they had that together and it broke apart, you were looked at as, a little, you were looked at as subhuman. This unfortunately happened with, number one, with other immigrants who happen to be of Western European origin in the United States. So, like, if they were Portuguese, if they were Italian, then they would look at the Slav as like, oh. But, of course, because of the anti-Soviet propaganda, the one who was pulling the strings and was at the helm of the Slavophobia, the one who was at the helm of it was none other than the the Anglos of the United States of America. Now, granted, you know, if you were Slavic, let's just say you weren't going to have it as bad as, like, say, a Latin who is dark or brown, or a Asian who is distinctively looks different, or a, of course, African descended person who has a different color and phenotype, and also an unfortunate history in America, basically. They were gonna have it for you. You know what I mean? So the thing is, and it dawned on me, I never realized this. I never really realized this until I really sat back and said, huh, damn. But the American media, what I realized, the American media, when you saw Slavic people in films, right, they were never really depicted as like good people. They were always depicted as like hitmen. They were always depicted as like mafia bosses. They were always depicted as those who wanted to bring back the Soviet Union. For example, you know, you had Air Force One, this movie with Harrison Ford. You know, the hijackers of the plane were Russians. You had that other movie, what was it called? The James Bond movie. A lot of those James Bond movies, the villain archetype usually was like a Russian or something like that. You had who else? What other movies do I want to think of? But I noticed that you know, when you look at the media, the way that the Western media portrayed a Slavic person, it was always like this kind of like bad guy, you know, up to no good, communist, you know. And the only time they were good is if they renounced their Slavicness, you know, if they were just so much of now a patriot to the United States, or if they were a defector to the United States, you know. That's the only time they became good. Now, although this is about Slavophobia, let me just add another side note into this. There's even some Slavic people who say, you know, not quite white. You know, there was a film that said like not quite white, or white but not quite, the history of Arab and Slavs in America or something like that. I forgot the title of the film. But this should tell you something. So, you know, and you do see this. I mean, you know, Slavic people, you know, they have some distinctive features of that are not really, when you think of quote unquote Anglo-Saxon, you don't think of them, so to say. You know, you don't really think of them. But then we have to look at how the Arab is portrayed in Western media. How is the Arab portrayed in Western media? Terrorists. Every single last film. Every single last film, whether it be with Chuck Norris, whether it be with Arnold Schwarzenegger, whether it be with Jamie Foxx, whether it be with Mark Wahlberg, George Clooney, whether it be with any one of these people, how are they portrayed? When you really think about it, America media and Western media as a whole is essentially racist. Okay? It's essentially racist. You rarely see a figure who is not quote unquote Anglo or American patriot depicted as someone who is good. Okay? That's the thing. And I want to throw something out there. My enemy is not FBA, as they call themselves. My enemy is not Latins. My enemy is not the Arab. Okay? My enemy is the brains behind the anti-Black sentiment, which was programmed into them, and the xenophobia, which was programmed into them. That was my enemy. That's my enemy. As a matter of fact, as crazy as this sounds, I was on Clubhouse yesterday, and I just went off on this Anglo guy. May Allah forgive me, but I crashed out. Okay, I crashed out because he is one of those types who tries to LARP as, he's down with hip hop and stuff like that. And, I just crashed out on him, because that made me even more upset that, he got the audacity to try to come at me, and you're visiting, you better be thankful someone let you into that space. You know what I mean? So, again, back to the Slavophobia and things like that. I'm going to end on this note. I see more marriages between Poles, Ukrainians, and Anglo-Americans, not only due largely to the Russia military operation against Ukraine, but because of the same ideology. When you look at Poland and you look at Ukraine, they're not going to tell you this. And I think I've done videos on this before, but in 2014, it's obvious that Ukraine was overthrown by a Nazi regime. And so that's why a lot of Anglo-Americans sympathize with that, because again, that's their mentality. I hate to say it. I really hate to say it. This is just the way they think. I mean, this was, and even when I was there, they would do it in a passive aggressive style, and that's going to be on the next video. I'll make mention of it on the next video, how they would do it. And even although some white American women will try to spark up conversations with me, it would be one word answers, like yes, no. Like I hate to say it, but I have PTSD from them. I really hate to say this. I have PTSD from what I've experienced with those people. Okay, I hate to say it. As a matter of fact, I'm still making hijra is like rehab, and that's another video in itself. You know, making hijra is like a damn rehab. But with this being said, yeah, you know, I did not know this existed in America, and I didn't even know there was such thing as this word. You know, I didn't know this word existed. And again, I'm not saying that they had it as bad as people from, let's say, Latin America or Africa had it, because I mean, with Africa, shoot, man, in Latin America, we unfortunately experienced genocide in many ways, cultural, sometimes spiritual, definitely economical. But whew, on a final note, this is probably why I'm where I am. And you know, I prayed for this, and I'm still praying for this to, you know, for me to succeed. And I'm hoping that I hope that the hand of Allah is upon me in what I'm doing. And, you know, I hope my intentions are pure. You know, it just was unbearable being there, you know. And I'm just going to say, even if, let's just say if a place was, let's just say a place was predominantly black, so to say, you were still under their watch. It's a problem. You know, and let me just say this. It doesn't have to do with the color, but it has to do with the actions. And I hate to say it, but the actions of the Anglo are it's the reason why the world is the way it is right now. It's the reason why they are having a birth crisis. It's the reason why we're in war with Ukraine right now. When I say we are, I'm speaking in Russia, because, you know, inshallah, in a matter of months, I will have a Russian passport. And it's the reason why, you know, largely we have what's going on in Palestine. You know, it's these reasons, it's these factors. So with this being said, I'm gonna end the video. This is part one. And as a summary with this, it basically went like this. Nazism turned into Slavophobia. Slavophobia and Nazism was, I guess you can say, exchange between, you know, the Germans and the Americans and other Western Europeans, which is also pretty much trickled down into their religious systems as well. Don't let it fool you. Try showing up. I dare you to try showing up as a person of color to a church that is predominantly, you know, Anglo, and see what happens. You know, see how you fare. See how they look at you. See if they look at you as a brother in Christ. So, with that being said, they don't like me for a reason, okay? The Anglo doesn't like me for a reason. The one who wants to be friends with the Anglo and cozy up with them so much, being like, you know, the Ukrainian, the Pole, the African who still colonize. And the FBA, who, is very xenophobic. They don't like me for a reason. And it's fine. I'm okay with that. It's fine. As long as I, know that I stand on the path to truth. Well, with that being said, I'm signing out. Sahel signing out. This is part 1. And part 2 is coming, inshallah. Inshallah.